prime minister of the mighty Persian Empire, the Greeks, the Romans, the Ottomans, the Tsars, the Nazis, the Soviets. What do all of these far-flung empires, nations, and individuals have in common? All of them came against Israel and the Jewish people, and all of them wound up in the ash heap of history, where Iran's regime and its terror proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah will soon join them, cursed for all times. And against all odds, Israel has outlasted them all, because God is a promise-keeping God. He keeps his covenants. By the way, he's not done with the great people of Iran. Remember, modern-day Iran was known in the Bible as Persia. Think of Esther and Mordecai, Cyrus and Darius, Ezra and Nehemiah. All of these great biblical figures had ties to the Persian Empire, which means Iran is a Bible land. And I don't believe it's a coincidence that Iran is also home to the world's fastest growing church. It's a mostly underground church because Christians in Iran face horrible persecution, but it will continue to grow. If history tells us one thing, it's this: you can't stop the gospel. Yet radical Islam will continue to try, and it's making inroads right here in America. We've got a shocking update on the rise of Islam in your backyard after the break. Stick around. To tackle back tonight is the West sleepwalking into a civilizational collapse. Islam is rising, not only in Europe, but right here in America, and Dr. Rod Martin says the church needs to wake up. He's CEO of Martin Capital and host of the Rod Martin Report, and he joins us now. Rod, always great to see you. Hey, Dearborn, Michigan, Minneapolis, the brand new mayor of New York City, Zoran Mamdani, an Islamist. And right here in Texas, Rod, where I'm sitting right now, we're hearing that there have been 48 mosques built in the past 2 years alone. What is happening here, and why should we be concerned?
Well, it's certainly not mass conversion in the United States. It's an incredible importation of people who, for the most part, as they will plainly say, as Ilhan Omar will plainly say, don't represent the United States, don't agree with the United States' values. Omar says blatantly that she doesn't represent the United States in the U.S. House of Representatives. She represents Somalia. Well, that's a problem, and it's a fixable problem, because the truth of the matter is, at the governmental level, no one has a right to come to the United States except United States citizens. It's always a privilege. It may always be controlled on any basis that is in the best interests of the country. That's the law. That's as plain as day. On the church level, though, we need to be more articulate about expressing why a Christian worldview is actually preferable to an Islamist worldview. And those distinctions are not that hard to draw, but our churches are kind of sleepwalking into this, and before they know it, in at least some parts of the country, they're simply going to be outnumbered.
Yeah, Rod, could you break down a little bit those distinctions you mentioned, but why biblical Christianity is incompatible at the end of the day with Islamic civilization? Very tough to coexist.
Well, it really is. And it doesn't mean that you can't get along with individuals, from each faith. That's perfectly fine. But ultimately, Islam is built on a book that demands conquest. And it just couldn't be plainer than day. And you don't have to look any further than the actions of the early Muslims in Muhammad's lifetime and immediately after. In the first century following the rise of Muhammad, you have the conquest of all of the Middle East, all of North Africa, all of Spain, nearly France, all of Persia, into India, and even far beyond, by the sword, and conversion of the people there by the sword. You say, well, that's then, this is now. Well, tell that to Hamas. Tell that to Hezbollah. Tell that to the Taliban. Tell that to the Ayatollah in Iran. It's simply not true. And wherever you go in the Muslim world, you have significantly fewer rights, particularly for the weak, for women, for children, for the elderly. You have dramatically different views of where rights come from than you do in Christian civilization.
Yeah.
And before I hit that point too hard, I must acknowledge there have been times in history when Christians have not acted that way. But Christians have not, by and large, ever gone around converting people by the sword, or have they recently done anything more objectionable than holding a fellowship supper down at the Baptist church? And that's just completely different from what we see throughout the Islamic world.
Yeah. Rod, great points all around. By the way, as you mentioned, the Islamic armies drove into central France before they were turned back by the hammer, Charles Martel. They reached the gates of Vienna twice, and at that time it was through attempted military conquest. But now the Europeans, Rod, have let in waves of Islamic immigrants. What's the future of Europe, and is that a cautionary tale for us here in America?
Well, at some point you hit a tipping point, and there's just no way to get around it. Germany, in particular, has tried to deal with its demographic crisis not by having more babies, but by importing workers. Well, okay, if it's importing workers from Poland, that may work. Germans haven't always gotten along that well with Poland, but they seem to be right now. But if you're importing them from Syria, and they're nearly all military-aged males, which was certainly true this time 10 years ago, and they aren't bringing their families. If they are refugees, where are their children? Where are their wives? Where are their mothers? None of those people are there. They come in, and we see the crime waves that have resulted, the attempts to force Islam onto natives in Germany and France and Sweden and so forth. And it's just staggering what we're seeing, the rape gangs in Great Britain. You say, well, that's just crazy talk. That's just too much. That couldn't possibly be true, except it is true. And it's in the headlines in Europe every single day. So if you duplicate that in the United States, guess what? You're going to get the same result. And ultimately, we have a system that allows tremendous freedom. And our enemies always use our freedom against us. The communists always did and still do. Everybody always does. That's one of the inherent dangers of liberty. But the problem is, at some point, there is a point at which you must agree or you can't have civil society. If you don't agree that everybody has a right to live as they want, but under a system in which rights come from God, not government, and there are certain immutable things inherent to the person that no one else may violate, eventually you just lose that entirely, and you don't have that society anymore. And now you're Algeria or Syria or Lebanon.
And the Muslim Brotherhood's philosophy is Sharia law for one and all, whether you like it or not. Hey, we mentioned London, parts of it, Rod, unrecognizable now. The Muslim mayor there, Muslim socialist mayor Sadiq Khan. Zohran Mamdani, of course, the brand new mayor about to take office on January 1st in New York City. I describe him as more of an Islamo-communist. Big picture, Rod, repercussions, ramifications of Mamdani taking power in our largest city and our financial capital, New York City. About a minute left before the break.
Well, the bigger problem with Mamdani is the communist part. He probably won't have a lot of influence on immigration policy, but he'll have a tremendous influence on taxes in the financial capital of the world. It's going to create tremendous capital flight, which has already begun, into Florida, into Texas. It's going to really harm the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ in favor of the new Texas Stock Exchange. It's really going to be a disaster.
How can President Trump approach this, Rod? Anything he can do? He mentioned last night he's going to speak to Mamdani soon, perhaps. Anything he can do to kind of exert pressure on Mamdani in New York?
He can do a lot, because everything Mamdani wants to do costs insane amounts of money that he's going to struggle to get through his city council. He's going to struggle to get past Albany, but a lot of that money comes from Washington. The president can nerf some of the rough edges of what Mamdani plans, but it isn't really going to change the underlying reality. New York is going to go back into a bad stretch, not that different from the 1970s, but certainly in many respects worse.
Yeah, fasten your seatbelt, no doubt. More with Rod Martin, folks, after the break. By the way, follow him on X. He's a must-follow on X. Check out the Rod Martin Report. After the break, big meeting tomorrow at the White House. Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi Crown Prince, will be meeting with President Trump. What will they discuss? And what about the economy? A lot of concerns about affordability. How should you be encouraged? More with Rod Martin after the break. Stick around.
That was live from D.C., where President Trump invited Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince into the White House with a grand ceremony.
Big thing. And we had a great meeting 2 weeks ago with President Xi, but on AI, we're doing well. And I have a man, David Rommel. Yes, sir. David, could you say a few words about what you're seeing on the job front and all of the some of the assets, and also how we've been helped by the Saudis in terms of the kind of investment they've made, please?
Yeah, most certainly. Thank you for the opportunity. I am a facility leader for GE Vernova, and if you look at the landscape for GE Vernova investment, over $750 million in the U.S. focused on true manufacturing jobs here stateside. We're looking at tripling the output of our Greenville, South Carolina facility, where we make the gas turbines that are supporting U.S. needs as well as the Saudi Arabia needs. So real jobs, $300 million in gas investment, resulting in over 500 pieces of new equipment being installed in the Greenville, South Carolina facility. That translates into roughly 1,800 jobs across the board for GE Vernova as we try to scale capacity to be able to meet this demand. Along with that, we're partnering with local communities to build the skill set that's required to meet these capacity needs. So that talent pipeline is incredibly important. So it's real jobs in the manufacturing space.
Well, you've been great, and thank you very much. And we love that state. I won that state by record numbers. I won a lot of states by record. Texas, a lot of them by Indiana. We're working with Indiana or something right now. We won that. We won a lot of them by records, but that was one of them. I want to thank you very much. Say hello to everybody. Great job. You're doing a great job. Thank you. So, just in wrapping up, we'll take a couple of questions, but I want to just tell you what an honor it is to be your friend. And I very much appreciate the investment of now $1 trillion, okay? I'm glad you got that out. I didn't want to be the one to tell it, but that's great news.
You keep increasing, Mr. President.
I know.
Each time the opportunities are just increasing more and more.
Well, the opportunities, we're doing better. If even if you look back 6 months ago, I mean, all of a sudden you feel even better. So, and I think we're only going to go in one way. Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. President, have you approved the export licenses for advanced chips to Saudi Arabia? The export licenses?
We are working on that. We're negotiating that right now. Marco, do you want to talk about that, or Scott?
Well, I mean, that's part of what we may have announcements on that later today. But that's what we've been working on is the mechanics by which something like that could be achieved. And it's part of the broader process, part of this broader engagement and cooperation between our two countries.
Certain levels of chips. Yeah.
For the Crown Prince, Your Royal Highness, you're talking about $1 trillion in investment. Could the kingdom continue to do that with oil prices in the mid-60s?
We are not creating a fake opportunities to, please America, please Trump. It's real opportunities. For example, when you ask about the AI and the chips, Saudi Arabia has a huge demand of a huge need of computing power, and we're gonna spend in the short term around $50 billion by consuming those semiconductors for our needs in Saudi Arabia. And with the agreement that we're gonna have with America, that will allow us to focus that consuming power in the short term by $50 billion from America, and long term with hundreds of $billions in the long term. So there's a lot of real opportunities that fit to our needs in Saudi Arabia and fit to our investment strategy.
Mr. President, is it appropriate, Mr. President, for your family to be doing business in Saudi Arabia while you're president? Is that a conflict of interest? And Your Royal Highness, the U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office. Why should Americans trust you? And the same to you, Mr. President.
Now, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
You're with who?
ABC News, sir.
Fake news. ABC fake news. One of the worst in the business. But I'll answer your question. I have nothing to do with the family business. I have left, and when I've devoted 100% of my energy. What my family does is fine. They do business all over. They've done very little with Saudi Arabia, actually. I'm sure they could do a lot. And anything they've done has been very good. That's what we've done. We've built a tremendous business for a long time. I've been very successful. I decided to leave that success behind and make America very successful. And I've made America more successful by far than it ever was, and that it ever could have been, no matter who was president. There would be nobody bringing in $21 trillion, that I can tell you right now. As far as this gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
Just yes, Mr. President, allow me to answer. I feel painful about the families of 9/11 in America, but we have to focus on reality. Reality based on CIA documents and based on a lot of documents that Osama bin Laden used